Peace, family. Peace, family. Communication is key in warfare. Tonight, we're going to get into the importance of communication and the importance of communication when it comes to warfare. We're going to dive into amateur radio and why I got involved in amateur radio and why we all need to be involved in amateur radio. What is amateur radio? And what does it have to do with you? What does it have to do with me? What does it have to do with what's going on in the world right now? Please tap in and share this out. Invite people to come. I'm sharing it out right now, but as I share it out, I would like everyone else to share it out. We've entered into a time in our world where we have to begin preparing ourselves. We have to start taking seriously our condition and taking seriously the reality of our state as a people in this country and on this planet. The time for play is over. If we haven't figured that out, yet, then we might just be lost. It's time to wake up, family, and it's time to get busy. It's time to get serious. Give me a minute. I'm just sharing this live out. I got a long list to go down, people. All right. Peace. We already got my brother Sean is in the building. We got Sister Yashika in the building. We got Cold Queen in the building. Peace, brother Sean. Please send this out. Share this out. We got Sister Nadia of Black Majesty in the building. Cold Queen, peace, sister. All right, so communication is the key to warfare. That's the title. This is a very serious conversation that I want to have. This is a very serious talk that I want to have. We have been watching the world unravel around us for the past, well, really, since we've been alive, but we've really seen it happening for the last 7, 8, 9 months. And not everyone is seeing the same thing. You know, it's like I've heard somebody explain it before. You know, you can have 10 people in the same room reading the same book, and everyone, if you ask them what they got out of it, they'd give you different answers. They will recall the story in different ways. It'll affect them in different ways. So that saying that there's two sides to every story is not necessarily true. There's many sides to a story as there are people who read the story, right? The reality is we're all looking at what's going on in different ways. We all have our vantage points. We all have our ideas about it. And I want to share with you how I see what's going on in this country, what's going on with our people specifically, and what's going on in the world where communication and warfare is concerned. Peace, Sister Marquis in the building. Sister Black Goddess in the building. Beauty Tech Geeks is in the building. So in order to... So what we're talking about is amateur radio, right? That's what I deal with. You know, my page just says Brother Daniel or Daniel KC1NCF, right? KC1NCF is my call sign. It means that I am a licensed amateur radio operator. What is amateur radio? Amateur radio is basically a facet of the radio world where people who have people that want to get into a hobby of radio, people who want to use radio for the purpose of personal learning, people who want to basically learn how to use these radios to learn about electromagnetic technology. Amateur radio is divided up into really two parts, if you will. You have those who use amateur radio, like I said, as a hobby. Those who they try to see how many communications they can make. They'll have competitions where they'll see who can make the furthest communication, who can communicate from the U.S. to Africa, to China, to Australia, in different parts of the planet, who can make the most of those contacts in the shortest amount of time, who can build the biggest antenna, who can build an antenna that can bounce a signal off the moon back to the earth in order to make a communication, right? These are things that people get into amateur radio for. And then you have a whole nother group of people who get into amateur radio for the purpose of survival. You call them preppers, doomsday preppers, people who buy these radios with the intention to use them in emergency situations, such as hurricanes, earthquakes, and situations where how they said the grid would go down. They want to be able to pick up one of these radios and maintain communication. Why? Because these radios are not attached to any network, no mobile network. They're not attached to any satellite networks. They're not regulated by any of those entities that regulate your cell phone, that regulate the internet, that control communication in any other way other than the individual with the radio and their ability to manipulate this radio to make contact with someone else who has a radio in another part of the planet, whether it's right down the street from you or somewhere across the globe. So that's, you have hobbyists, and then you have those who get into it because they're what we call preppers, right? I need y'all to share this out because this is a very heavy topic we're going to get into, and it's a time-sensitive topic. It's something that is missing in the black community. It's missing amongst those who find themselves in the struggle. It's not just the black community, but we are disproportionately underrepresented in that field. Peace, brother Flex Truth in the building, right? So when we talk about amateur radio, we're talking about a field in which it's predominantly old white men. I got into amateur radio, as you see the star and the crescent. I'm a follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Honorable Brother Minister Louis Farrakhan. And one of the things that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught was the fall of America. There is within the nation an understanding that this world that we're currently living in, this world that is controlled by Satan, is coming to an end. It has to end, as there were kingdoms before this world was erected. There were dynasties that were risen and that have fallen. And now America, having been the power for centuries, has to see its own fall. And so knowing that, Honorable Elijah Muhammad having that foresight, he prepared those of us who are his followers. And one of the ways he prepared is he developed a list of different items and things that we would need to store in our homes. Teach us what foods to store in our homes. Teach us what kind of instruments and what kind of things we needed to have in order to make it through such a time as we're living in now. And on that list, one of the things on that list was radio, walkie-talkies or amateur radios. And so as I started going down my list, when this whole COVID thing popped off, checking to see, make sure I had batteries, making sure I had food, like a lot of us did. A lot of people were searching for toilet paper. People were looking for alcohol. They were trying to store up all of this stuff that they felt they needed in their homes in case everything got shut down and they were not able to get out anymore, right? But not, and then there were those, of course, who know what amateur radio is, that were getting their radios. They were making sure that they had extra batteries and all the accessories and all that kind of thing, right? But I don't know too many believers who actually went out and bought these radios and did the research to learn the importance of these radios and why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad would allow this or include this on that list. So I did that research, going down the list, checking it off. And as I did the research, as I was looking up what is amateur radio, the only faces I was seeing were old white men, middle-aged white men. Most of them had money, and most of them had these radios because they were in it for the hobby, right? And so, yes, I can share that list, Shug. I can get that to you. Hit my DM with your email. I can get it to you. And so I started doing the research, and all I'm seeing, I'm going on YouTube and I'm looking up amateur radio, and I'm getting on these live YouTubes and then even watching recorded videos, and it's all white men in the chat. It's all white men doing these presentations, and I didn't see us represented there. Of course, I started digging more. I want to know more because I realized that these radios are capable of doing amazing things. You know, and the implications of having this radio or not having this radio are really great, especially where it comes to the time that we're living in and the reality that we're seeing kingdom rise against kingdom. We're seeing the anarchy. We're seeing these militia groups been poking their heads out a lot more because they've gotten comfortable with the climate that's been created over the last 4 years, right? And so doing my research, as I started to look into the importance, I came across some stuff that basically showed me that amateur radio is not something, it's not like for us it's new. For black people, for the most part, it's new. When I talk to black people about amateur radio, they're looking like, what is amateur radio? What is that? And I start to go into it, and it's something completely foreign, right? But it's something that's always been present. It's something that we've witnessed being used almost every day of our lives and not even realizing it, right? And how is that? When you see, when you go to a parade, when you go to any large gathering where police are required to be there for crowd control, whether it's a marathon, whether it's a big parade or a carnival, there are groups of people, amateur radio operators, who are registered in every city around the world, every small community around the world, where these amateur radio operators are a part of groups called RACES, and there's a group called ARES. ARES is Amateur Radio Emergency Services. RACES is radio, it's, give me a second, it's Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Services. Now, when they register with these groups, these groups are controlled in large part and include in large part people who are in the police force, their local police force, the fire department, the EMTs, their local FEMA organizations and other local federal organizations. They're all a part of these groups, and they train these these licensed amateur radio operators how to use these radios in emergency situations, right? Just follow me. I'm trying to paint a picture here because I realized, most of us, we don't know what I'm talking about. Right? And so I want you to share this out. I need you to get people in here because they need to hear this. Because we're in a time where our lives have always been at stake, but they're a little bit more at stake now. We're going to get into that, right? And the importance of this and why I'm talking about it. But they're training these amateur radio operators how to deal with these radios and use these radios in emergency communications. And one of the ways they train is during these events, these parades, these even concerts, huge concerts. When you're in ballparks, they do this, right? So when you think about the Boston Marathon, one of the biggest marathons that happens in the globe, right? It's 26 miles. All along the course, there are amateur radio operators. These are regular citizens, right? Amateur radio operators that are deployed for every single one of these marathons, and their job is to wait along the way and to communicate between the different emergency services, different things. I can't say exactly what they communicate because I'm not a part of that right now. But they communicate with the police, with the EMS, and all those emergency organizations to make sure that there's order, to make sure that people are safe, and these are the reasons they give. But it's more than that, because they tell you it's about training. It's about training for emergency situations. And so what happens is, so there have been real life situations where they had to actually use these for emergencies. Word of some, the Boston bombing. A very, very important part of what I'm going to say to frame what I'm talking about. When the Boston bombing happened, and they found out that the detonator that was used to set off that bomb was a cell phone, the emergency services immediately went into action, and they shut down every single cell tower in that area. Not one person for miles around where the Boston bombing happened was able to get on the internet, make a phone call, through any of these other communication services. There wasn't no getting on IG. There was no getting on Facebook. There was no making a cell phone call. Hey, son, that it didn't happen. The only people who were capable of communicating at that time were people who were amateur radio operators and the police, the EMS, FEMA, and all the other emergency services. They were the only ones capable of communicating at that time. It's important to know. It's important to understand. Because if you were down there and you had loved ones who went somewhere else, maybe to go check something out around the corner in a big crowd, and the bomb went off, and you tried to call them, you wouldn't have been able to call them. You could have got lost in the panic. They could have got lost in the panic. The only ones able to communicate were them. When 9/11 jumped off, there were amateur radio operators deployed who were also helping the police and the EMS and FEMA and all these other organizations to communicate. And the police themselves, when they communicate using these radios. They are licensed to use these radios over the airwaves. When they shut things down, this is how they keep communication. What's another example of how these radios are used and when they're used? When you look at incidents like Hurricane Katrina, when you look at the earthquakes in Puerto Rico, when those places were destroyed and their cell towers and their communication networks were shut down because of natural disasters, they already had a whole network of amateur radio operators in place to respond because they knew they could see through seismic activities that an earthquake was imminent. So they already alerted them through NOAA, the NOAA Weather Radio Service. They get that on these radios. They get that communication on these radios, and they're prepared. And all the communication that happened when those earthquakes happened in Puerto Rico, a lot of the communication from that island to the mainland America happened through amateur radio operators. They were the ones that were connecting emergency services to the mainland to coordinate goods and services and things going back and forth. It was amateur radio operators who did that. I'm gonna get into this. All ties into the big picture I'm painting. Also, just go look this stuff up. Look up Hurricane Katrina. Type in amateur radio during natural disaster, amateur radio during Hurricane Katrina, amateur radio during earthquakes in Puerto Rico, and you'll see it. Also, more recently, another major thing happened, and this one is it hits a little harder for us. But we've seen amateur radio in action. If we just take a second and we think back to when our brother George Floyd was murdered, and for those who followed the news, those who watched the news, one thing that I seen, and I've asked others and they've seen this as well, and I want you to put a 1 in the comments if you've seen this as well. But as you watch the news that night, the night after, and for the weeks during these protests, something I believe, and I know they've seen this because I've seen it locally, but the news station would have a split screen, a picture-in-picture, if you will, of downtown LA, New York. In my city, they had Boston as one of the 4. And your city is probably one of the 4. They probably also had LA. They had Minnesota. They had New York or whatever. But it was 4 screens. Different cities. But one thing that was in common, they had an aerial view of a crowd of people of whatever size. Pardon, that's my son in the background making a bunch of noise. But a crowd of whatever size. And then you seen police with barricades at one intersection, barricade at another intersection, a barricade at another intersection. And then there's always a way out. And you hear them on those radios, on the foghorns, matter of fact, oh, we need you to disperse. We need you all to go this way or that way. And what we were seeing in multiple cities simultaneously, Sister Khadijah's in the house, peace, at Khadijah Bakes. So what you were seeing was the emergency services, mainly the police, but they weren't the only ones present. What we were seeing was them hurting our people. We was watching an aerial view of our people being hurt. Not just our people. Black Lives Matter consists of a lot of different people. There were other organizations there. But what you were seeing when Brother George Floyd was murdered, for that week afterwards, was aerial views of them hurting our people. The question is, how are they able to, and we outnumbered them in every single one of the situations, how are they able to take control of that scene with all these people, with all this emotion and energy, and heard our people in whatever direction they wanted our people to go. It wasn't the guns. We weren't afraid of the guns. It wasn't the loud horn. The only tool that they used to do that was these radios. When you see these officers and they have these walkie-talkies on their hips, they're not handy-talkies on their walkie-talkies. A toy. This is what they call a handy-talkie. This is something that, you know, it gets the job done. This isn't the best quality radio, but it gets the job done. What we witnessed was them using communication in a situation that resembled and actually was it was basically a part of a war that we've been facing. We've been fighting a war for a long time, and what we seen when Brother George Floyd happened was a tactic or maneuver that was executed as a way to push the war in one of the other directions. Black Lives Matter, when it's deployed and they do what they're doing is a military tactical maneuver. They're going and they're shutting down highways. They're shutting down major shopping centers. They're shutting down cities. When Black Lives Matter moves, they're using military tactics and maneuvers. Those who control that, those who send those communications out to all of these people in Black Lives Matter, and we trying to figure out how they all got the communication and knew where to meet so quickly when things happen. Peace, Sister Farina. What they're doing is they're using communication. Even the Black Lives, what they're doing is not make these radios and say, but they make a communication. Why? Because communication is the first line of defense. Not only is it the first line of defense, when you're at war and you intend to make a move against your enemy, the first thing you do is attack communication. Get that in your mind right now, because this is a huge part of what we're talking about. You need to understand the importance of communication in warfare. Communication is key in warfare. So when our brother was murdered and you watched on the news and you seen them aerial views of our people, and we wonder how all those people with all that energy was shut down. It might have took a week, however long it took, but they were shut down. They were shut down because the police were able, with their helicopters, of course, and all that, they were able to see, okay, well, we need 2 units on Gleason Street. We need to set up a barricade there. We also need a unit over here on Tremont Street. We need a unit over here on Berkeley Street. We need to cut that off and move them towards Winter Street, because they know how to they can control the flow of the crowd. That's what they were doing. That's what they were doing the whole time. Now, why is that important for us to understand? Because we're in a war. We are at war as we speak, and we need to get that into our heads. This is not a game. We watch all these shows like The Walking Dead, and it's entertaining, but they use amateur radio on that show. There's a reason why they push that. Because you're talking about a time where years later, after the world ended, they were still communicating. That wasn't, oh, well, I thought the grid was down, because you can use these radios apps in the grid. That's why they put it in there. When you see them in any of these movies about natural disasters, these are always front and center. You just never noticed it. You just never noticed it. They always use amateur radio in all of these movies, because those who know. Those who don't are lost and will lose. You can go out and get all the gun licenses you want. You can store up all the food in your house that you want to. But if you don't have communication, you lose. It's a simple fact. The first thing that any military does when it is preparing to attack an opponent is to cut their communication. Soldiers work or move off of orders. If you are not able to receive an order or give an order effectively, you will not survive. It's nothing for a group of 10 people to put themselves in position using communication to take hostage or put under siege any size group of people. That's all they have to do is set up communication. If you don't have communication, you pretty much lose. It's nothing for them to say, okay, we're going to set this up here. Oh, because they're moving down this street. Cool. Put the barricade there. Block them off. Take down that building. Knock down a tree in a road. We need you to... This happens. When you see war-torn, third world countries on the news and wherever you might see it, and you see roads blocked off and buildings blown up in strategic places, that's intentional. They will cut down a tree in the middle of the road to block you. That's easy to do. You need to have a map, as a matter of fact. You need to know what the hell your city look like. You need to have a map and you need to have a radio. Because it would be nothing for me to get 2 or 3 people with the same understanding in these radios, and you got your little storehouse, and we watch you from a distance. We can communicate, but you can't. You don't see us, but we see you. And we could set up a way to infiltrate wherever the hell you at, and you wouldn't have no clue. And we'd be able to coordinate it and take whatever you got. You're not even going to be thinking about using your firearm because you don't know what's going on. Now, why is that? Why is that also tie in? Why? Because these radios and those who have these radios are able to listen to, you heard that siren? Yeah. Able to listen to emergency communications. That's one of the big keys. It's not even just about being able to transmit, but it's also about getting intel. I turn this on so I can hear this. That's the Boston Police Department. And this is perfectly legal, by the way. It's completely legal to listen in on any frequency that or any conversation that's being had over the radio, including your local emergency services. You need to know that. You need to know that, and you need to have access to that, because at any point in time things can jump off in the climate that's going on and what's going on in the world. We don't have much time. There's no community of people. We talk about unity, and we need unity, and we talk about the examples of the Asian community and certain Hispanic communities and the Jewish community and how money circulates in their communities for a certain amount of time. But we don't talk about they're also prepping, because they know they're unified. They know that at some point in time they're going to have to defend themselves as a people, as a community, as a group. Every other community has some degree of knowledge about amateur radio, other than the black community. Why is my light flashing? I don't know. Is it flashing? Well, I don't know. It's something about, who knows? My radio's off, so it's not that interfering. It's not that frequency. They probably aware of what I'm talking about. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't do some conspiracy theory stuff, but hey. But the reality is this. Communication, like I said, is key in warfare, right? Now, so let me get back on track. So when you look at the way these communities are organized amongst themselves, understand in your mind, when things hit the fan, no one's coming for us. You're not going to find an Asian community that's over there preparing themselves and they're stocking up as a community and they're getting their stuff together, communications plans in their households, and then as a community, you're not going to find them with a page in their plan about going to the black community to help them out as well. You're not going to find a plan about Little Italy and their plan to help black people when stuff jumps off. We're going to have to do this ourselves. And there's no way for us to coordinate amongst each other except through some form of communication. It's nothing for them to shut down cell phone towers. I got T-Mobile. In the last year, T-Mobile's towers have gone down at least 3 times. Nobody was able to make phone calls or text. Stuff wasn't going through for 2 of the times. It was like 24 hours. I couldn't make no communications whatsoever. Not whatsoever. He said, Brother Flex, of the government trying to tap in on you. Hey, praise be to God. You know, that must mean I'm saying something right. So we have to do it ourselves. We have to be prepared. Make sure I'm sending this live out to people. Invite people in. They need to hear this. But we have to be prepared. Point blank period. There's no time left. We're dealing with coronavirus. We're dealing with number 45 and his idiocracy and those who love him and those who follow him and adore him. We see all of this stuff happening on the news. These people, there are people who are part of militias, military organizations, military style organizations and groups who train not just with firearms. When you see people in them organizations that train firearms, you probably never noticed it, but they always have a radio on them. When you see people who like to go hunting, they keep radios on them. These go hand in hand. If you got a firearms license but you don't have one of these, guess what? I can set you up anytime. Have that firearm, but if you don't know I'm coming, and if I'm communicating and coordinating in a coordinated effort with other people who also have firearms and know how to use them, you're done. You're done. That firearm license ain't gonna do you no good. If you can't communicate with those in your network, you're not going to take on a whole bunch of people. You might be able to take some down. I ain't saying you ain't got no skills, whatever you got. But a well-organized militia who has the ability to communicate in any situation, they'll win every time. If your organization does not also have communication, and if you both have communication, whoever's most practiced with it, whoever's most familiar with it, they'll likely win. And if you knew the other side of communication, the first thing that you would be thinking about and should be thinking about is how to take out the communication. When things hit the fan and we find ourselves fully engaged in the war that is going on, because we've been at war, but when you see martial law, when you see tanks in the streets, and we've seen the National Guard get deployed a couple times since in the last few months, we've seen it happen. Things died down because they were able to pacify our people, but something is going to happen, and things are happening, and eventually we're going to be so fed up that they're not going to be able to pacify us. But the only difference is their ability to coordinate, because we got guns too. There are guns all in the black community. There are guns the police got all kind of guns. Every community has guns. But few communities are organized in such a way and coordinated in such a way where they can move and perform military tactics and maneuvers. He said, yeah, they had tanks in Milwaukee. Exactly, they had tanks in Milwaukee. It's nothing for them to press a button to shut down every single cell phone tower, every single radio tower. And if you don't have access to one of these radios or know how to operate it, you're not going to go to CVS and pick up an FRS radio, them little rinky-dink radios, and be able to communicate with one of these. They don't have the power to do so. And legally, in the way they have it set up, they're not capable of communicating with these radios. I can go get one of those radios and press the button and be on the same frequency, and it won't go through because it doesn't have the power to do so. You need one of these radios. Again, the title of this is Communication is Key in Warfare. And so I pulled up some stuff just to read to you. Just a couple of things I just want to read just to frame some stuff. Now, one of the organizations I mentioned that trains citizens and amateur radio operators on how to use these radios and how to use radio services in emergency situations is called RACES. It's an acronym that stands for Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service, right? Now they have, so I'm going to read this real quick. RACES stands for Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Services, a protocol created by Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC. Many government agencies across the country train their auxiliary communication services, ACS, volunteers using RACES protocol. The volunteers serve their respective jurisdictions pursuant to guidelines, mandates established by local emergency management officials. As I was saying, they are all connected with the fire department, they're connected with the police, they're connected with FEMA, they're connected with all these agencies. And then the next section, it says RACES volunteer operators are. It's going to tell you what they are, and there are 4 points here I want to read. 1, licensed radio amateurs. I'm a licensed radio amateur, so I have one of the qualifications to be a part of this group called RACES, right? Certified by a civil defense agency. Able to communicate on amateur radio frequencies during drills, exercises, and emergencies. So the drills are what I'm talking about when they're in the marathons. Now, they can communicate by cell phone during these marathons. They can put people to do that, but they keep these radios in case communication. These are drills that they do. They use real situations like a marathon or a parade in order to practice using these in situations where there are large gatherings of people. Why? Because when social unrest happens, they want to have their network of people prepared to deal with it in those high intense situations. We got hundreds of thousands of people along the Boston Marathon is 26 miles long. There are thousands, tens of thousands of people along that route. So these people who are practicing, it says during these drills, have experience using these radios in the midst of thousands of people. The last point, and the key point I want to point out that they have here, it says activated by local, county, and state jurisdictions, and are the only amateur radio operators authorized to transmit during declared emergencies when the President of the United States specifically invokes the War Powers Act. Meaning when the president signs executive order so-and-so and so-and-so because martial law has been declared and they want to make certain moves, at that point in time, they will shut down all communications. All your Instagrams, oh, something's going on, hey, I'm going live, and look what's going on. No, it's not going to be televised like they say. The revolution will not be televised. The only people that will be communicating during that time are people who have these radios. They're going to shut everyone else down. The only people who will be allowed to communicate are those who have these radios and know how to use them. We're not playing games here. We're at war as a people. We've been at war for more than 400 years, and if we ain't got it yet, if George Floyd wasn't the last one to be murdered, but we were pacified so well that people after that were murdered, and the cry never got as loud. Because they keep giving us these pacifiers and we keep falling for it. And we fall back to sleep. Minister Ishmael, the national representative of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan for the last 2 weeks delivered a message called The Lull Before the Storm. Basically talking about how we have been put to sleep and that there will be a time period where it looks like things have calmed down, but in reality they have not. And things will escalate. And when things escalate, and it's in this eye of the storm, it's in this lull, that we need to really be paying attention to what it is we have and what we don't have, and start adding on to our stockpiles like the messenger told us. Store food in your homes. Store your emergency supplies. Make your go bag. This should be in your home, and it should also be one in your go bag, because you got children, you got family members. You get out into this world and you have to flee your city or your neighborhood. It's easy to get separated in crowds of people when this panic happening. How are you going to communicate with your family? You got little children. The youngest, there's no age limit to being licensed for these, by the way. You can be 6 years old, 5. If you can pass the test, you can get a license. I think the youngest person I know of this license is 5 years old. They was able to pass the test, they could get a license. But your children need to know how to use these, because how do you communicate in a wartime situation? How do you communicate in an emergency? People in Katrina had no way to call for help. They were at the mercy of FEMA. FEMA is listed as one of the organizations here in the Races group that controls this thing. So they had a network of people. If you look up Hurricane Katrina and amateur radio, they had a network of people around that area that knew what was going on and were able to communicate, but they weren't sending aid there. You know why? Because we didn't have these radios. We needed to have these radios when Katrina popped off, and knowing how to coordinate amongst ourselves in order to save ourselves. We didn't have that, but we have that knowledge now, and we need to act on that knowledge. Because when stuff hits the fan, whether it's a natural disaster or whether it's something that's dealing with the climate in the world as it is, you need to be ready for it. I can't stress that part enough. You on that day, like at the end of the day, you're not gonna order a radio the day that the takes out radio. What you gonna do? You gonna wait by the mailbox? How fast you think that radio is gonna get to you? How fast you think that radio is gonna get to you? I'm gonna invite some people on in a little bit to ask their questions if they want live. I want to answer questions live, but I just want to just make the point, right? So Aries is another organization that deals with emergency services, right? And so I just wanted to read something from that just so you all know what it's all about. Let me just find this real quick. Pardon me, family. Because I don't want to sit here having, just listening. I'm not saying nothing. Especially for those who just came in, read the titles. Communication is the key to warfare. We're talking about the importance of being prepared with communication and being able to communicate during a time of warfare, like the time that we're in now. This is no joke. This is not something that we can push to the side. Again, like I said, we know about storing up food in our homes. We know about peace. My brother Jala, my brother is in the house. FY Fruit here in the city of Boston. Peace, bro. Thanks for tapping in. Share this live out, by the way. Share this live out. We know about Band-Aids. We're stocking up on Band-Aids. We're stocking up on food. We're stocking up on toilet paper. We're stocking up on all of this stuff. But we don't have an active plan for communication. I'm going to say this part again. We need to get this part into our heads. In warfare, communication is key. Why? Because in war, war is carried out by a chain of command. This chain of command, they're not all in one room. You have captains, generals, sergeants, lieutenants, private soldiers. You have different branches, military, the Air Force, the Navy, the Army. All these people have to be able to communicate. There are people at the top who send orders down. They don't do this by cell phone for the most part. They don't do this by landline for the most part. Most times they're communicating through some form of technology that is not attached to a network. It's not attached to a radio tower or a satellite that at least we have access to. They use satellites, yeah, but they communicate using these radios, and their ability, they can use this with the satellite. I can bounce a signal with this off a satellite, but if there was no satellite present, I could bounce a signal with this off the moon, bro. Sis, I'm able to take this radio and program it and use the right antenna to literally bounce a signal off the ionosphere. So all the cell phone towers go down. They cut down communications. You can't get on IG Live and say, hey, something's going on down. Don't come down this way, or y'all need to get up this way because this is going on, and take advantage of this opportunity. You're not doing it. You're not going to do it. So this is when soldiers get their orders, they get their orders through communication. If you are a soldier, you don't move out unless an order is given. So if your ability to receive and give orders is cut off in warfare, nothing moves. Understand that nothing moves. Soldiers are broken, and they're trained and they're broken to follow a chain of command and remain locked into that communication, so that the superiors are able to control their movements. If you're in war and you're on the battlefield live, and your last instruction was to post up in this corner and wait further instructions, but you see danger coming, guess what's going to happen? Until you receive a communication or you have pre-orders to say, okay, if this happens, this happens. If you don't have anything to do or any orders on that, you have to hold fast. You have to maintain your post. People have died like that because communications did not come through. So the very first thing when an enemy is planning an attack on you, or if you were planning an attack against somebody, the first thing that's always attacked is communication. It's because it's so important. Every general, every officer knows the importance of communication in a time of warfare. And if you don't know it, you need to know it, and you need to know it soon. I don't want to keep repeating myself. So that's why I'm doing this live, because we've run out of time. We've run out of time. It's nothing for the powers that be to say tomorrow or tonight in 10 minutes to send out a blast. You get those emergency communication on phone sometimes, warning. Sometimes they're tests, but sometimes they're not. I received a few that weren't this year. It's the first time I received one that wasn't a warning. It wasn't a test. It was an actual warning. And people who live in hurricane areas, they know, places that are affected by earthquakes, they know because they receive those kind of communications. Peace, Brother Matt. You in the building, send this out. I'm gonna get into all that. Suge, if you want to come on in a minute, I'll bring you on so you can ask that question live. And so communication is going to be the first thing to go. But we as a community don't have time. We have to prepare ourselves. We have to be ready. I'm going to be doing more lives to talk about this. And I want us to please share this out, saying about followers, saying about this is literally about me wanting to share what I know and what I've come to understand about the importance of communication in this time. And it's linked to our ability to protect ourselves as a people, because we see ourselves being taken out. When our sister Breonna Taylor was murdered, when you see scenes like that, understand that when they're going and they're executing a warrant, when the police are executing a warrant, there's communication happening. They have to get a communication from now they're not doing it through the radio, from the judge, but they have to get a signature. The point is that there's communication happening. But when they get on scene, and you have SWAT, and you have these other agencies who are, depending on who's dealing with it, the ATF might be there, the FBI might be there, depending on the level of the warrant or whatever's happening. They're communicating through radio. Point blank period. They're communicating through radio. When I was sitting here, when the riots were going off, my wife and I were sitting here on our radios, and we were watching the split screen of aerial views of the cops corralling our people and herding our people like animals in various cities simultaneously, using these radios. That's how they communicated. We need you to send 3 units over to so-and-so street and set up a barricade there. We need a barricade at this intersection. We need a barricade at that intersection. We need to force them. They were doing that through radio. And my wife and I were sitting there listening to the Boston police, not even just giving those kind of orders. Every time something happened, we heard them communicate, oh, my car was just set on fire. I'm on foot. I need a unit to come meet me at this street. We were watching a police car get mobbed and heard the officer calling for help simultaneously, like live. As we heard him calling it over the radio, we seen it live on screen. It's live communication. You can turn on this radio and hear the police talking at any point in time. I'm gonna see if they're gonna come across so you can hear it again. I played it a little earlier. They're gonna communicate when they communicate. I can't force them to communicate, but if you hear something come over the radio, that's what it is. It's them giving away what it is that they're doing. It's perfectly legal. It's perfectly legal. That's the other thing. You gotta understand. This isn't something that is secret. You have every right to know what the Boston police are doing on these radios. EMS, I can listen into the fire department, whatever agency that is operating over these frequencies, I can listen to it. It's very important because something jumps off, something goes on in a town close to you, and you don't know about it because it ain't on the news. It just happened. Believe me, it's going to come across this radio. You'll hear some, oh, we need 30 units down, explosion. We need EMS. We need all units to respond. I've heard communications like that. We need all units to respond over here because there was a shooting. I've heard that communication at least 20 times since I've had this radio where it was all units respond. And I was aware of what was going on before anyone heard it on the internet. Anyone heard it on... I don't know if y'all can hear that, how clear it is. But that's the Boston Police Department talking. They got a call or something. But that is real. You can't make this stuff up. Like, and I'm not gonna sit to keep waiting for them to make contacts, but I just want you to know that you can do that. It's available and it's perfectly legal. But if we don't have the technology, if we don't start preparing ourselves for communication, all the food, all the guns, all the stuff that you have stocked up means nothing if you cannot protect it. And your first line of defense is going to be communication. You have to be able to, if you have a house, you have to be able to communicate with your wife without running around because there's people circling your house because things have popped off and they weren't prepared. Your neighbors weren't prepared, but they know you got food in your house. What are they going to do? They coming for that food because they want to feed their children. They want to feed their family. You need to be able to see that and communicate just in the house with your wife without having to turn lights are off. Because we know things, you keep the lights off all day and all night. Hey, I see them circling around. You know what I mean? Turn your radio down low. And you can do that. Because best believe, trained militias, and there are militias in every city around this country that know this and that practice and they talk about these concepts. If something hits the fan, they're prepared at any point in time to coordinate themselves from around the city and say, listen, we've been watching the Safe House for 4 months. This is how we're going to do it. Because we're going to cut off this way. We know how they move. But they're going to coordinate it using radio. This is how they have all the stuff you want. But if you can't coordinate your efforts with your family or your circle or your organization, you will not be successful in carrying out whatever idea you thought you had to prepare yourself for what's coming. With that being said, I'm sorry, family. I've been talking, hopefully not being too repetitive. I think I have a request for somebody to come live. All right, Sister Desire, if you're still in the building, I'm going to... If you want to come on live and ask a question or say what you thought about it, then type 1 in the comments. Hopefully I'll be able to get back and see that. Peace, Sister Desire. How we doing, sis?
Pretty good, pretty good. This is like really, really good information. And I remembered you talking about it before on one of the calls. And I've been trying to get like the website up. And basically answered all my questions. My question was, how young does the child have to be? Or how young can you be? You said a child young as 5. And also you answered in regard to, because I'm online right now. I'm on my, so I'm just looking over it. And you had answered my question in regards to, what was it? It's in every state. Like, so obviously, once I get the radio set up, I can have I can get communications in the state that I'm in, or the little town that I'm in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So,
Answer everything.
So as far as that's concerned, now there are different types of radios.
Mm-hmm.
There are radios that are capable of communicating at different distances. There are different types of licenses for the different types of radios. What you really need to worry about, like I said, there are those who are in this for hobby, and there's who are in it for preparedness. Those who are into for hobby, they get into all of these big antennas. They want to be able to make communications across the planet just to prove they can do it and compete with each other. If you want to do that, and there's something to that as well that I'll get into, right? But for what I'm talking about, you only need a radio that's capable of communicating statewide, maybe regionally. Why? Because in an emergency situation, calling someone in Africa is not going to get you the help you need.
No.
You're stuck and you're cut off. You need to know that there are other people in your community that you've dealt with, and like wherever city you're in, you need to be spreading the word as well. Listen, send them to my page. I have stuff on my YouTube channel that y'all can go check out, other lives I've done and videos I've put up. But you need to get them familiar, and you need to get them thinking along the same lines, because again, these work on a network, not a network like I said, like cell phone towers, but when you pick up this radio, if you make a call out, anyone can hear your communication. I can pick up your communication if I know what I'm doing. There's ways to encrypt it, but the reality is you need to have people you already know have the radio in your local city to be able to say, listen, I need help. I'm here. I need assistance. This is where I'm at. Or, or even you might need to contact the police or the EMS yourself in a situation where the grid was down because you're physically injured and you do need assistance, like hurricane tree, stuff like that. So I would say you only really need to worry about communicating locally, if anything, locally meaning across your state. For the age thing, so there is no age limit. If the person can pass, and you can't take the test for the person. Like when you take the test, like online, they make you set up at least two Zooms, sometimes three, it depends. But I had to have my phone camera on and one of my laptops on, and there were three people also watching me take the test to protect the integrity of the test. So they take it very seriously. So if a child wants it, the child has to actually know it to be able to pass that test, because they're going to watch the child, and actually you have to share your screen so they can see that you're not looking up things on websites while you're taking the test to try to cheat. They take it very seriously. But no, there is no age limit. If you can train your 3-year-old to use it and to understand the terminology, they can get licensed too.
That's
definitely.
Important. Yeah.
As far as information about it, if you DM me your email, I can get the information to you. Any information you need.
Will do. I'm gonna DM you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions?
No, thank you. I appreciate you, brother.
Praise be to God. Yes, ma'am.
All praises due to Allah. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. All right, so let me see. I see another request. I see Sister Markey. I'm going to bring Sister Markey on. This is important stuff, family. We have to be prepared. We have to take this seriously because our lives are at stake. There are many instances in which we could have kept a movement going alive if we were able to see things coming and communicate effectively and, diminish another group of people's control over our movements. I don't know what happened. Let me see if I can. I'm inviting you in, Sister Markey.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Peace, Sister Markey. How are you doing?
hey, yeah. Oh, man. For a second, I was like, why isn't it working?
Is my screen still flashing for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is that? That's crazy.
Yeah, it's still flashing. It's like they listening to something.
Hey, praise be to God. I ain't speaking nothing but the truth.
So my first question, I have two. One is, as far as like the radio types, I see the one that you're showing us, but is there different types of radios that maybe are more advanced and have like maybe more range or different features or something like that?
So when it comes to the radio types, right, so there's a few things that you deal with when it comes to the radios. Now, the physical bodies of the radio, they have different qualities. This is actually a more durable radio, stronger, it's better made. But this is what you call this one is what you call a GMRS radio. Stands for General Mobile Radio Service. This radio requires a license as well as this radio. The difference is these radios here, they're not as capable as an amateur radio. So this is not amateur radio, if you will. This is not something that you would use to contest or to make long communication necessary. This is something that's better for local and emergency communications, basically in a tight situation.
Okay.
These can be used for that as well, but their capability is greater. You're able to program more channels into it. You're able to use certain bandwidths and frequencies that these ones are not able to use legally. Not that they're not powerful enough, but legally they're regulated to a certain bandwidth, if you will. And so when you're thinking about these radios, this one, this is called a GMRS radio, General Mobile Radio Service. This one is amateur radio.
Okay. General radio and then amateur radio.
Right. And then the things you see at CVS, the things you see at Walmart, those are what's called FRS, Family Radio Service. Yeah, like a walkie-talkie. Yeah, what they call the little toy things.
Yes, I had when I was like 7 or 8. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, exactly. And those, they have a fixed. So another thing about both of these radios, they're fully programmable, meaning you can connect them to a computer. You can actually program these radios. You can modify them, meaning the antenna can be removed. A better antenna could be put onto it. And when it comes to an antenna, the length of the antenna does matter. The longer the antenna, the longer its range is. Now, the quality also matters there. You can have a longer antenna that's not as quality as an antenna that's slightly shorter, but it's the longer it is, technically, the farther it can communicate. And the idea behind that is that the higher up a signal is, the higher up you go, the farther you can see. So same thing for a radio frequency. The higher up you are, the further that radio signal can travel without coming into obstacles. So I have some antennas here. Like this is a very long antenna. I don't have it on radio right now. If you can see that, that's very long. So this one is capable of doing more and reaching more than this. So they're modifiable. That's important. You can crack these radio open and change the guts. You can make them more powerful and do a lot of things with these radios. They're fully programmable. Now, when you're talking about the abilities, now the license for this radio is one that you just have to pay for from the FCC. You go and you pay them $70, I think it was $70, $71. You pay for it, you get a license, and and you can use this to communicate with your family. So if you get the license, Margie, your mother, your father, your siblings, your uncle, your auntie, even your in-laws, by law, according to the FCC, are allowed to operate any of your GMRS radios with your license. They don't have to get a license. This one, if you get license, say that again.
They don't have to be in my household. They just have to be family.
If they're family, it literally says in-laws, all of that. It says that on the FCC's thing. So this radio here, with this license, I'm the only one that can operate with my license with this radio. Okay,
the amateur radio.
Right. No one else can operate it. My wife can't use it legally. Only I can. And that's to listen is legal on any of these radios. Anyone can buy one of these radios and listen.
Okay.
And that's important. That's another reason, just to have it, just to listen and know what's going on. Because when stuff pops off, the police communicate. EMS communicates. FEMA communicates. You need to hear what's going on. But in order to transmit in a situation where you need to give communication, legally, you have to have a license. And even though it's not attached to a grid, if you will, communications can be tracked. So that license part is very important. Now, all right, so did I answer your questions?
Yeah, I think that was good because both of those you were saying are like on a more of a local level type of communication, but amateur radio can go further.
Well, this one, right, yeah, so this one, with the right antenna and with the right knowledge, I can communicate to somebody in China right now with this radio.
That's awesome. Okay, so then my next question was along the lines of like a scenario. Like, what is the number one scenario with radio that we should be prepared for if we were to go on this journey with you?
I would say the most important part is internal communication between you and your family, meaning your immediate family, household. I think that right there for me is the biggest thing, because in any situation that you go in, especially for a man, when a man is engaged in battle of any kind and he has a family, it's hard for a man to engage fully while he's thinking about the security and safety of his family. It's always in the back of a man's mind. I didn't say a boy, I didn't say a grown male, a man. It's always in the back of a man's mind to secure his family. And it's hard for a man to give himself fully to whatever battle he finds himself in if his family is not secure. Knowing that in an emergency situation that your family, you're able to communicate and they know how to communicate and know how to use it and they're safe, gives a peace of mind that I think is invaluable. It's like if you were out in the street with your child and someone ran up on you and they wanted to fight for whatever reason, who knows? You're going to be so concerned with your child being okay, it's going to be hard to focus on that fight. And if you're the type of person that just loses it, it'll be very easy for your child to be abducted, harmed, or whatever happened in that situation while you're engaged. So there has to be a plan there. But I think one of the most eminent things we need to worry about is the climate that's happening in the world. And that's really what I'm talking about. There's a lot going on. We're still being slaughtered. People are unhappy on every side. We got to get this, family. People are unhappy. There shouldn't be a person on this planet that's satisfied. There shouldn't be one person on this planet that is comfortable. There shouldn't be one person on this planet that is not upset with what's going on in this world. I don't care whose side we pick. Everyone is and should be unhappy and preparing themselves for the inevitable that someone's going to jump off. This isn't a fight between two people. This is a fight between nations, between communities, between races. We're seeing a war between political parties. We're seeing a war between gay and straight. We're seeing a war between every different sect of people are at war. I'm sorry, I don't excuse my passion, family, but that's the reality. As Black people, we need to get it in our mind. We've been at war for 400-something years, almost 500 years. And we're the least prepared, but the most attacked.
Yeah.
And the number one tool they use when they convince you to do something is through a form of communication. Everything is translated through communication. Everything. From the smallest thing to the biggest thing. When we talk about we're in the ABS tribe, we talk about advertisement. We talk about that's communication. Your ability to use mini chat, to respond and to send email blasts or whatever. That's communication. That can be wiped out. You got a multi-million-dollar company and you rely on automated systems, and your competitors find a back door. They learn how to cut off that communication. What happens to your business? Same thing.
Yeah.
They're going to attack your communication. When they come out and they put out false propaganda, they made a communication that harms your business, or they're putting out lies. Communication. When we look at Trump and he says something like, oh, well, just stand back and stand down. That's a communication to people who ride for him. These are people who more than likely are part of some of those militias. Some of those people he were talking to are amateur radio enthusiasts, whether they be on the hobby side or they on the preparedness side. He's talking to them type of people. We know because we see them at their rallies. We've seen them chasing buses and stuff with their guns. Trust me, they had these on their hips too. Mm-hmm. That's a reality that we're not going to escape. And if we're not prepared when stuff hits the fan, we're going to watch people come into our communities using these radios to corral us like sheep.
Yeah. Right
to the slaughter. That's a reality we got to get through our heads. And that's why I'm doing this. This is about getting our minds set to understand that the time is now. I honestly forgot the question you asked. I don't know if I answered the question or not, but it led to that. Praise be to God.
The question, yeah, about the different types of radio, and then the first thing we should be for, you said that familial in communication, which is absolutely on point. So thank you so much, man. I know people are loving this live.
Praise be to God. I just want to add some value to our people. So for y'all that don't know, Sister Marquis is ABS Tribe certified affiliate. Yeah. And so when you look at the ABS Tribe, when you look at digital real estate, you look at the ABS Institute and the ABS family, is a clear sign of the power of communication over long distances.
Mm-hmm.
We are probably the most tight-knit online community. I don't know that there is another community, except for maybe amateur radio, honestly, that is more tight-knit across the planet. We
Yeah.
got people that come on and that are in Alaska, that are in
Yep.
Europe, that are
Yep.
in Dominican Republic, all over the world. And we all are so close through communication alone. And very few of us have ever met each other. But we're so tight that we're always on each other's lives because we know we have a praise be Allah, I play a big role in that. But we have others, like we share each other's stuff out. So I see Sister Marky go live. What do? I send out a communication. And so now the tribe is tapped into what Sister Marky's doing all the way from whatever city she's in. I don't know if she's in Florida now or not. But wherever city she's in, the tribe knows. So we know to migrate our attention there, and she can update us on what's going on business-wise or something, so that we're able to make an effective move. What we're doing is we're performing a military tactic and not knowing it. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan teaches that business is warfare. Sister Marky is the business startup queen. So when she goes live, and I see it, and I send that communication out, it's like the general saying, listen, we got something going on. I need you to get this out to the soldiers. And that's when she knows, she sees the tribe coming into her call. Someone comes and shuts that down, and they shut down our IG for a week. We'd be lost. If we couldn't get on Zoom, the tribe is, what do we do?
Yeah.
What are we going to do?
That's a really good example in a way to kind of like getting the tribe as our, the first group of people of understanding that, like the same way we're able to communicate on our Zooms and on these lives and in the Facebook group, the next step to elevate that communication is being able to communicate through amateur radio. Because, let's say we get on this journey together and something goes down, we're able to communicate with each other. It's like first get that family communication down, and then next we establish.
Right. Exactly. Right. What are you talking about? Right. Exactly. And that's powerful. Like we're doing this thing across time zones, 3 hour differences. You know, I think you're breaking up. You're breaking up a little bit, so people have a hard time listening to you. No, we can hear just about everything you said. It's just breaking up a little bit, really.
Oh, okay. I mean, did you hear me though?
It's just breaking up a little bit. Yes, I heard everything you said. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's
I'm able
good.
to piece it
As
together.
long as you heard it, because like I really want this to be successful for you, and so giving you that example of like a way to break it down to the tribe. And
They're saying they can't hear you. I can hear you, but they're saying they can't hear you at all.
okay, I don't know
Y'all
why.
can hear it at all?
They said they broke my
Oh, wow.
communication. Oh, they said
Okay,
yes.
that's better.
Yeah. No, it
All
didn't
right.
break completely out. Oh, okay. So I was just saying, y'all, that like the same way he's talking about the example of using the tribe and how we're communicating on live and we're in the Facebook group and we're on our Zoom calls. Learning this amateur radio is the next step of that. Learning that this amateur radio is equipping ourselves for the next thing that we need to be ready for. COVID stopped us from being able to communicate with each other in person, and we found the
Right.
tribe. Next, we're
Exactly.
not gonna have these cell phones. These cell phones aren't going to be forever, so we definitely need to jump on this radio with Brother Daniel here and establish, like he said. That's why I asked that question, as we're jumping into this journey, what is the first thing we need to have down packed? And he said it is that familial communication. He has 2 radios. Y'all, we need 2 radios. We need that one radio license that he said, if we have it, us and all of our family can use it. That's us being prepared to protect all of our family, not just our household. Then you establish that household communication. And then after that, we focus on the tribe communication between, like, if everything goes down, I trust Daniel. Daniel, hey, what's up? Like, what's going on over there in Boston? You know, that's a major city. So things are going to happen differently in Boston than they're going to happen here for me where I'm at in Georgia. I'm in like, so things are
Right.
going to operate differently. I watch a lot of them little end of the world movies now.
Right, because you in your mind subconsciously you know that the possibility for that stuff to happen is real, and if it didn't happen, those movies always give us little tips and pointers on how you can be prepared in general for a major disaster or something to that effect. I'm typing something and I want to pin a comment real quick. So I got to type slow, family, because I'm the typo king in the tribe.
You type in the site arrl.org. Oh, okay.
So if anybody wants info on how to get involved on getting radio, I want you to hit my DM, send your email, and also go subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Daniel KC1NCF on YouTube. I'm going to be putting a lot of stuff up there, and in the time coming, and also I'm going to be I want to counsel people, because it's not something that you just get into without knowledge. So you can't buy if you bought this radio tomorrow and you turned it on, you won't know what you're doing. It's not something where you can just press a button, it's just going to communicate to somebody. These radios have to be programmed.
Mm-hmm.
I got channels programmed into this, so it takes a little bit more than just buying the radio. So make sure y'all hit me in my DM if you want to get involved in amateur radio, know more about licensing and all that kind of thing, and then also check out the YouTube channel that has a lot of information as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel.
No, thank you. Appreciate it. I don't think I've seen any more ones. Anybody else want to come live, ask questions, or comment what they think or add to the conversation? You can press 1 to go live, or just request to go live, and I will bring you in. I see some questions, but I was really paying attention to what Sis was saying and what I was saying, so I didn't read all the questions and stuff that was in the chat. So if you have questions, you can come on live and ask them live, or press 1 and I'll bring you in. So, brother, I do have links somewhere on. I have some links somewhere in my timeline. I need to get that link up though in my description or in my bio on my Facebook page. I'll do that to link it to my YouTube. But if you go into YouTube, just type in Daniel KC1NCF, and you should be able to find it. It has the same picture that I have up here for my profile picture. All right, we got Sister Kenya, Code Queen, that wants to come in. By the way, go to Code Queen's bio. She has a link to all her different podcasts. Me and her have a podcast that went up on Monday. Y'all make sure you check that out.
Hey, what's up?
Peace. How we doing, sister?
I'm good. I just got a quick question. I wrote it earlier, but I don't think you saw it. This was like a while ago.
No, I didn't see it.
How do you stay How do you stay safe using it? Using the ham radios, and how do you try to keep weirdos, like people who, like weird people playing around on this type of thing? Like, how do you stay safe from that or avoid that?
Well, so with anything electronic, anything that sends out a radio signal, anything that sends out anything along a light frequency can be intercepted. That's number one. So when amateur radio began, it was started by people, regular people like us. This wasn't started by the FCC. It wasn't started by the military. It was regular people who learn radio technology the way people learn, and discover things. And so what happened was these regular people who were normal citizens who had a knowledge of electromagnetics, really, it was electromagnetics that they was playing with. They introduced this into the introduced this to the military, to the Air Force and all that. And once the military got hold of it and realized its power, they also realized that those amateurs, that's what they call them. They call themselves hams. They call themselves amateurs. They realized that they had access to these same communications the military were using, which was I can listen to the police. So eventually, a gentleman set up what we now know as the FCC to regulate the airwaves and to say that so radio falls on the light spectrum. We think radio is sound, but really radio is light. It falls on the light spectrum. So what they did is they relegated amateur radio operators to a certain bandwidth on the radio spectrum, and we can operate on those. Depending on your license level, we determine which ones you can use. And so, but the reality is, it's a light signal. It's nothing more than that. It's literally a beam of light that you can't see from to another radio. So it can be intercepted. So there is no real way to actually fully protect yourself. The number one line of defense is to be licensed and to be knowledgeable about how the radio works. It's knowledge is going to be a line of defense. And then knowing that what you communicate can be intercepted, so you have to be careful with location, with saying what it is that you have. You know, you don't want to get a radio, well, I have this in my home, and then, you know, I stay over on. You don't want to talk like that, right? And then also understanding that those people who you buy radios for, or you get to buy radios in your own personal network, develop a code, a key system, so that you can go on the radio and say, you know, 3 eggs and a chicken. And they know that means meet me, you know, on Esmond Street. You just like that's not far fetched. Like that actually would be dope. Like no one would ever know what you're talking about. Like tell your children, you know, hey, turn on your radios, you know, I need you to turn on your radios every day at 1 o'clock and leave it on for 15 minutes. If I say 3 eggs and a chicken, it means meet me over here. If I say a ham and a turkey, meet me over. Like it can be something crazy like that. It needs to be something that no one's gonna. There's no connection to. If it's an address, don't use numbers. You know what I mean? If it's a coordinate, don't use numbers. Use something that is completely unrelated. But that's how you protect yourself. Knowing how the radios work, have the knowledge of it, and then you need to actually set up a way to communicate with your people over the radio that no one else is going to understand. So they can be listening all they want to, but all they're hearing is 3 eggs and a chicken. Sounds crazy. Who would figure that one out, right?
Yeah. I don't know if you talked about this. I missed it if you did. Like how did you get into like doing this? Is it just that preparing for whatever to come and you just fell into it, or you just had like a genuine interest?
Honestly, it was because of the wisdom of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the wisdom of the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan. Honorable Elijah Muhammad was able to, he was teaching since the 30s when he first started teaching of the fall of America. The book didn't come out in the 50s. He was teaching this stuff since the 30s and detailing how America would fall. And with that came the, of course, for him to prepare his community of people, those who listened to him and those who followed him, to prepare for that day. You know, for some there, that was 90-something years ago, so some didn't see this day, but they were able to teach their children, who taught their children, and it went down the line. But then but at some point in time, a list was developed of things that we should store in our homes. Items that we should have to be prepared for emergency situations, to either shelter in place or for go bags if we ever had to be on the run from something. Because some people are going to be in situations around this world where they're going to have to be stuck, where you'll be stuck. And you're not going to be able to go nowhere for an extended period of time. And the other people who are going to have to evacuate where they're at. Like people in Florida are dealing with evacuation. Not Florida, and Florida happens to hurricanes and stuff. But in California, with all these fires, people are being displaced like crazy. In California, trust me, the word "go bag" is a big thing. I don't know. I'm not from California. I'm saying this off. I don't know because no one has said this, but I'm just in my mind, it's got to be a big thing because everyone knows if a fire jumps off, you got to be ready to go. So I'm sure a go bag is huge. You know, something that they talk about. in places where hurricanes hit frequently and tornadoes, they have go bags. And one of those things in their go bags is going to be a radio. Because if the time happens and evacuation call comes and my children are in school, or my husband is at work, or my wife is with the girls, somewhere, how am I going to communicate with them when everything's gone out? So that being said, when COVID jumped off, the minister reminded us, his followers and followers of Honorable Elijah Muhammad, store food in your homes. Prepare yourself, you know what I mean, and to shelter in place, because he knows what's going on. He knows more than anyone else what's going on. You know what I mean? Anyone on this planet, he's more aware of what's going on than anyone else. And so he let us know. And so when that came, I went to that list. It was being disseminated amongst the believers, and it's something that's public. It's not at all just internal to the nation. It's something that's public, and it's something that can be shared. But on that list was radios. And so when I seen that, naturally you go through the list first and you see, what do I already have? You check it off the list. You say, what do I have the money to afford now, the space to store, what can I get easily? And you start checking stuff off the list like that. Both for the home and for the go bag, and then based off of what you need for your family. And when you come across something like this, most people aren't going to think amateur radio, especially black people. I've had people at my job. Oh, my grandfather used to do amateur radio. He was a ham. Oh, my uncle did amateur. He was a ham. He gave me one of his ham radios. Even the ones who weren't involved in it themselves, they knew what it was. Every black person I asked had no clue what the hell amateur radio was. There was no stories about their grandfather doing anything. So as I'm searching for this on that list, all I'm seeing is white faces. And that puts dots in my mind. Why don't we know about this stuff? And then as I searched, I noticed that these are people who are part of militias. These are people who are big on the Second Amendment. There's a direct correlation with those who are gung-ho about guns and those who are in the amateur radio world. And those preppers. And most of them are middle-aged to old white men.
Yeah, those are the survivalists, off the grid type of people.
Right. And thank you for everybody. I didn't say that. Thank you for everybody for tuning in and coming to listen. This is an extremely important topic we're talking about. Communication is key in war. We have war for 400 years. Some don't accept that. Whatever. If you don't accept it, then there's nothing I can say on here that's going to convince you. You need to wake up. But for those of us who are woke up, that want to be woke up, or on the way to being woken up, understand that we are at war. And the most important piece in war is communication. Why? Because, so I'm just giving a cap for those who just came in or might not know what I'm talking about. The most important piece of war is communication. Why? Because wars are fought by soldiers for the most part. Be they in the Navy, Army, Air Force, or the Marines. They're all, and then the Space Force. The Space Force. Sorry, people. And so, but those soldiers carry out orders that are given from their superiors. On the battlefield, and even not only on the battlefield, they communicate in large part through radio communication. Not all radio, and this isn't the only type of radio. This is a handheld radio. They have radios that look like the receivers in your car, like the old radios, and it's not that old, but it's old now. But the radios you have in your car that you can take out and replace, they have some that look just like that, but they're the same type, but they're more high powered. They have some that look like the receivers you have in your house. You connect your boom, your stereo to. You connect your surround sound. The receivers that you can connect all your stuff to it. Now you just have wireless speakers that connect everything. But those old receivers you had in your house, they have something that look like that are even bigger and more powerful. They're called base stations that are capable of doing way further communications with way more power to reach clearer across the world. So this is just a handy talkie. But radio, it gets a lot deeper than that. And then I can go another time about those type of radios and why they're important as well. But right now, what we're talking about is this. Why? Because on the move, we need to be ready all the time to be on the move. I can use this for my house and on the move. If you bought a radio just for your house, a big clunky thing that has to be plugged into the wall, and you had to go on a run, sorry, it's not going to get you nowhere. So you need to have this first. You got to have these first. You have to have something that's mobile. All right.
The way you talking, it makes it sound like it's about to be The Walking Dead out here.
Yeah, well, it's been The Walking Dead for a long time. When we watch our people being corralled like that in the streets, and they're so emotionally charged and they're moving off of emotions, yeah, that's how animals move. Let's be real. If you see a bunch of pigeons in the middle of a big open field and they feeding whatever they feed on, and you come running behind them, they fly off. They emotionally react. And you see sometimes they'll fly and they'll swoop in a certain direction like this. Same thing. You know, when you watch sheep eating and then the sheepdog come and that one dog and he runs and he see them moving, he runs over here and cuts them off once. When you see the police, cut off them over here, they're hurting just like the dog does the sheep. Same thing. So when you talk about The Walking Dead, when we watch our people live on TV in different cities from aerial views of them being sent down and controlled like that, we are watching our people being herded like animals. And the reality is they're not animals, they're walking, but they're dead to the knowledge of how that's happening to them. So they fall victim to those who have these areas. Because the police officers, when you see them communicate, and you've ever been arrested and you sit there or you've been pulled over, your officer at your window talking, and you hear, shh. Now they might not be talking to the officers talking to you, but you hear stuff going over their radios all the time. This is, when they're in their cars, they receive their communications through these radios. They're not the dispatch don't call them through their cell phones. Hey, unit so and so, we need you to no. They put a call out that all the cars can hear over radio. It's the same radios. That's why I can turn this on and listen to them speak. I'm hearing the same communications that they're hearing from that operator. When someone calls and they send and then you talk to the dispatch gets on the radio and talks to the officers through these types of radios. And you'll see some of them walking around with different size antennas. This is exactly what they're using. Different. So no, we're like The Walking Dead out here, completely dead to the knowledge and the reality of what the hell we're dealing with, and they're treating us as such. They don't expect us to. It's as organized as Black Lives Matter is in a reactionary way, meaning we don't see them. I got this from Brother Ken. I've known this reality, but the way he says it, we don't see them handing out food in the community. Basically ambulance chasers. Someone dies when they show up, but they do it in a huge way. Tens of thousands of people in one city pop up. They were communicated to somehow. Walaikum salam, Sister Victoria. They were communicated to. But one thing that they don't have, and if there is anyone in that crowd of Black Lives Matter with these radios, best believe they're those provocateurs that we know that be coordinating with how to get a pallet of bricks out there. Those agent provocateurs. You need the bricks, but you need to call unrest. That's the Boston police talking. I don't know if y'all heard that or not. That was them. Yeah. But
what do you think, like, the time frame of like this? Like, okay, this for people who don't have any background of preparing for this. Like what's the time frame supposed to be? Like, how
you could study for this test in a day or two, depending on how you study. It really depends on you. You need to go and find out. I can get you information about where to go to study and find out what information you need to know to pass the test. But it depends on how you study. And you can study for it in a day, in a week. You go take the test. You set up the test. I want to hear something, because sometimes I'm sitting here and I hear something about gunshots. Like, I've seen that happen. I've heard something about stuff up the street where somebody was shot, and then 2 minutes later I watch the police fly up. Tribe calls Brother Sean, be like, when they come off you, it's always, something like that. But it because there's sirens going on all the time. But I have the difference between me and everybody else that hears the sirens. I have the ability to tap in and hear what they're saying and know what's going on before it gets to the news. What was I just saying?
The time frame about studying.
Oh yeah, so it's really up to you. You can do that, and once you've taken the test and you pass, you can have your license issued to you by the FCC within 24 to 48 hours. Depending on the time.
What are you supposed to do with
Say
that?
Say it again.
So you get the license, and then what?
So I keep one in my pocket, in my wallet. I keep one at home so that if something was to happen and I came across air for some reason, whatever, something happened, I have proof. You know what I mean? There's nothing that you have to do after that. Once you get your license, you get active with it. You know, it's up to you. You can choose to get into it for whatever you want. If you want to do hobby thing, you just look up how to get into competitions. You get active. That being said, I was listening to a gentleman teach about it, someone who's in the amateur radio community, is a white man, of course, and he made a very good point about hobby and preppers, and there's somewhat of a divide there, if you will. But he made the point that if you, because people are, oh, people just for hobby and it's a joke, and because we're using this, we're preppers, we're doing this for real life situation. But he made an extremely important point. Though, if you go by the radio and you don't practice using the radio, meaning actually communicating with people, learning how to program it, learning how to modify it so that when something hits the fan, it's already second nature, you know what you're doing, then it's not going to work for you. If you buy this and just go put it in your go bag, when something happens, you're not going to know what you're doing. It's not just a walkie-talkie where you can just pull out, press it, and someone's going to hear it. It doesn't work that way. So he said basically, even for a prepper, the smartest thing they could do is to get the radio and use the radio like hobbyists use it, because hobbyists get very familiar. Because they're field testing, they want to learn every little thing about how to get the best communication, how to get the most static-free communication, how to get the furthest communication, how to get it the quickest, how to establish the call seamlessly. So in emergency situations, someone who practices using this like a hobby, it's second nature. And so there's that. I would say treat it. I would say get into it for contesting, but if you did get into it for contesting, it would really help you out a lot. I don't do contesting, but I do get on the radio to some degree, and I know how to program the radios and all that, and I can go into that privately. And I can do that on the live right now.
What do you mean contest? There's contests to do what? Like, how do you compete in that? So
people compete with how many contacts they can make. See how many different contacts they can make with different radio operators around the planet in a short amount of time. They might give themselves a 24-hour period, and they'll make a communication to somebody, and they'll write down the coordinates and all that kind of thing. Boom, and log it into the system, and then at the end they'll see who made the most legitimate communications with their radio in that time period. And that way, and then also they do something to see who can make the first communication. Okay, you log in where you're at, your exact coordinates, and then you try to reach somebody in the farthest part of the world. And every time you get farther, you log that and then see who can make the longest distance communication. So contesting like that. Who can build the best antenna is capable of doing things. They have some amazing things. There's some amazing stuff. Like I said, there are people who made antennas on their roofs using lawn chairs. People have made what they call a Yagi, where they take a tape measure and they make an antenna out of a tape measure. There are antennas that you can use that you can use to bounce a signal literally off the surface of it, because it's light and the moon is reflective. You can bounce the signal off the moon. It's called EME, Earth, Moon, Earth. But that's what they call it in amateur radio. But you can take this radio and use an antenna and point it at the moon, and like I said, it's network free. But the moon has the ability to see things that you can't see, but line of sight wise, and bounce your signal off the moon to another part of the planet and make a communication that way. You can bounce this signal at certain parts of the day off the ionosphere itself to make a communication. That's how powerful those are. You can actually communicate, and legally so with the license, you are allowed to communicate with the International Space Station with those radios. So they have great capability and power.
You said you're allowed or not allowed to communicate?
You are allowed to. Like NASA had a program where they would have schools set up little stations. They would teach children in the white community and allow them to communicate with these radios to the astronauts on the International Space Station.
So why is it something that needs to be licensed? I don't understand. What's the point of?
I'm able to listen into the police, which you are able to communicate.
That's why. Okay, I didn't think about that.
Police are trying to save somebody's life, especially if it's a real emergency situation. And I get on their frequency and I start and messing up the frequency. They want to know who has a license. They want to know who's on there doing what they're doing. It's important. You want that. You want it to be regulated because in an emergency situation, you want to know that you know how to use it and that those airways are being protected, because when it comes time for your life to be saved, you don't want anyone doing that to you. And so, like I said, with the military, when they first started this, the military got hold of it after the public. And once they got hold of it, they realized that the public and those who knew how to use them were able to listen to their communications. So there had to be something set up to regulate it so that, you know, I can listen to the police. I can't listen to the Air Force. And if I did figure out how to encrypt or decrypt their stuff, they would know. And my behind would be off in Guantanamo or something. So it has to be regulated. It's something that, you know, we shouldn't expect anything less. There's very serious implications. The ability to get on that radio and receive signals and send signals. Think about one of the biggest thing, right? Airplanes. That's how they communicate. Airplane operators communicate over radio. If you were to intercept or fool with a frequency that the airline, which is why they have you cut off your phones and stuff, because they don't want radio signals in the air that interfere with their communications with the radio towers. That's very dangerous. You don't want to be in that situation where air traffic control can't make a communication to the pilot and vice versa, and you're on that plane and someone's fooling around and something happens. You know, like it's possible with this stuff. The person with the right knowledge and a little bit of knowledge in one of these radios can do a lot of damage. I have a question.
What could be, like, how do they cause damage? Like, how do you encrypt that if it's just like light waves or whatever?
It can be encrypted, but it can be decrypted as well. I don't know necessarily how to encrypt a frequency, but I'm pretty sure I could figure it out within a day or two. Anyone can figure that out. You could probably YouTube how to do that, honestly. But it's the reality is capable. I got a question though. I want to answer this question. Sister Tika Bakes, are you able to record the audio on the radio? So they have digital, they have analog radios, they have radios that, yes, you can record the audio directly to different machineries and gadgets and stuff. Like you can hook up radio up to a computer and record that. You can actually, as crazy as it sounds, there's no touchscreen on it. You can send digital images. There are ways to program these radios that you can send images with these radios. It's very awesome. You can send text messages, even though it's not connected to the network. There's ways to do that. They can be connected to internet. Certain radios can be connected to the internet. So they have a lot of capability. Or you could just sit here, like if you have somebody who's listening to things in your home, you practice using it, you could just set up some other recording device and just record it as it comes through. There's different ways that you can record.
And you said these are electric, or they are? Like, how does something that's not electric do all that?
It's electric, but it's not connected to the grid, meaning it's not connected. Like, this doesn't rely on how T-Mobile has towers used to communicate, or for their customers to communicate.
But you would still need like electricity or batteries to keep it going, because like what if
it's electric, but we're definitely saying it's not. It's electric and it's not connected to a grid, so it's electric. It's definitely electric. It has to be electric. Not being connected to the grid just means that it's not connected to radio towers. It's not connected to or dependent on satellites. It can use a satellite. I can use this to bounce a signal off a satellite. I can bounce a signal off of T-Mobile's tower if I wanted to, but I don't need it. If someone in Africa has their radio and I have my radio and all the towers went down, I could bounce my signal, like I said, off the ionosphere. I can bounce my signal off the moon if I know how to. If I have the right antenna and know how to use it, I can make the communication regardless. If T-Mobile's towers go down, your cell phone can't do that. You're done. There's no texting. There's no calling. There's no communication over the internet. It doesn't have that capability. The only thing that has the capability are these types of radios.
Okay, because I was thinking like if electricity, like the electricity grid, because that's what I thought they mean off the grid, like electricity grid went down or something like that.
When people say live off the grid, they're talking about that as well. But so in that situation, if the grid goes down, that's why these handhelds are important, because you can have extra batteries. If the grid goes down, you can build a generator. You can build a small generator. You can build a device to charge these batteries using household materials. Yeah, that's possible. So even if the grid did go down, and you said, well, it's electric, so you can't plug it in. No, there's ways to recharge these things like that. They figured all that out a long time ago. This type of technology is old, very old.
I mean, I get it. I've seen it. I just never really really like looked into it or researched it. I've heard it, but I knew it existed. There was this movie that I used to like called, I never seen it, called Frequency, and it was about frequency with Dennis Quaid.
Frequency, yeah.
Yeah, and how like the son communicated with his dead father through a ham radio, like some magical thing happened where he's able to relive his father's life. And that's how like I knew of ham radios and all that from that. I don't know, it's just interesting, but like every time you talk about stuff like that and the way you talk about it just makes it seem like it's scary, like the world is going to end or something.
They take real things and they make mischief with it. That's what the made man does. He takes real things and he fantasizes things. But the reality is, what they do is they take what they know. For instance, that your brain literally works off of electromagnetic frequencies. The same frequencies that emit from these radios, your brain emits the same things and receives the same things exactly the way. Matter of fact, these were designed and the technology was discovered after studying the brain. Like the whole understanding of how radios work comes from the human brain. A lot of the technology, a lot of what we have out there is based off of the brain's ability to function. Even mechanical objects like certain parts and machineries and things are built off the way the elbow and the arm is able to flex. And that's where
a lot of the technology is based off the human body. Like cameras is the eye.
Yeah, even your hair is like an antenna. But I don't want to get into that kind of stuff. But so when you see movies like that, what they're trying to tell people is that all life vibrates on a certain frequency. That's when people say that stuff. That's real. Everything vibrates at a certain frequency. When you think about glass and someone's ability to shatter glass using sound with a certain pitch from their voice, what's happening? Pitch. What's happening is the person is matching their voice to the frequency of whatever object is vibrating at. And if you can match the frequency, you can break it. That's how people are able to do that. Scientifically, they know that. The audience might not know that, but they know what they're doing is they're matching their voice to the same frequency of their glass, and that's how they do that.
That's how they think, not how they built the pyramids, but how they got the stones so perfect, because they didn't have any of the tools that we had.
They say harmonics. It's another word.
Yeah, they had this tool where it basically looks like a Y or something, and then like there's a tuner kind of looking thing.
Like a tuner.
And they put it right in the middle of the rock. They knock the tuner, and the rock splits evenly and smoothly down, and that's how they believe they got the bricks for the pyramids.
Well, so there's all kind of narrative. They have all kind of different things about the pyramids, how they're doing it, and what they're basically telling people is that all those different ways are possible to do it. Have they figured out how to do it? I don't know that the pyramids are built that way. But what they're telling people is that they do realize that a lot of these things that we did, because that was us, that was black people, that was ancestors that did these things. But what they're telling the world in these different movies and stuff is that these people, these ancient people, black people, these ancient racist black people, were able to do amazing things and create these wonders. And they were doing it with less than what we have. We were doing it using vibration. We were doing it because we were able to control our voices so intricately that we could speak in a way that manipulated our environment. They call that casting spells, witchcraft, and all. That's where all this stuff comes from. All this fantasy that the white man makes out of it, mischief with. Is our abilities to manipulate frequency. When you look at all living and non-living things, they vibrate. Why? Because the subatomic particles are always in motion. when you think about, and I don't want to get too sciencey, but the reality is a rock moves at all times. If you look at a boulder, the mountain's moving, you just can't see it.
Well, because atoms vibrate. They even recreated the creation of an atom, or in a sense the Big Bang Theory, little in like in a science lab, by creating the same vibration and frequency of how it happened. Like these things are possible and real. That I mean, everything is vibration and sound. That's what
physics. Yeah, but I don't want to get into all that stuff. I want to keep it on amateur radio. You have any more questions dealing with the amateur radio part? If not, I want
to kick off.
All right. Thanks, you sister.
Right.
We need to do another podcast.
All right, for sure.
To go into that, yes, ma'am. All right, thank you for joining in. All right, anybody else wants to go live? Anybody else have questions? If anybody has some comments, either request or hit me or type of one.
I think you gotta text me up.
Oh, I have to do it? Oh, sorry. Mm-hmm. All right. Peace, Sabrina. Look, I still got 11 people in there. Anybody else want to join in? I'll take one more person. And then I got to get off this thing. I know this is a delay on Instagram, so I'll give it a few seconds, like 30 seconds to see if anybody wants to go live. If everything is clear, just, hit one in the chat. I'm probably going to go live again either tomorrow or the next day. Because I really want to get this in front of you. I want to get people geared up for the information that I'm going to be putting out, because we really do have to start preparing ourselves and be ready for what's at our doors. This is not a game. Like I said, it doesn't matter what material you have saved. It doesn't matter what food you have stored. If you're not able to effectively communicate in wartime situations and effectively carry out tactics and maneuvers to protect yourself and your family and your loved ones, anyone with a degree more communication, a degree more understanding is going to be able to overcome you. Numbers are not going to count at that time. It just doesn't matter. We've seen it time and time again. Our people have gotten hot over all kind of things, and we've gone out in the streets and we've got riled up and all of that stuff, and we're able to be pacified like nothing. And every single time, it's some form of communication that is going out that quells that anger, that puts a stop to that momentum. Be it the communication, meaning they're talking back and forth to one another to corral us and get us to move, or it's communication meaning we put a certain person on the screen that fits a certain demographic, dressed a certain kind of way. We watched Birx during this whole, there's focusing on Birx and Fauci during this whole coronavirus thing. What did you see Birx do? She came out one day and she mentioned somebody, a friend or something in Africa, something like that. And then every day for a while, she would come out with a different African print kente cloth scarf on, and they would let her get up there and talk, and people loved it. That was communication. That was communication. They were communicating. We're with you, black people. We know we're with you. We love you, and we're for the culture and all that other crap. That was one of their ways to use communication to quell us. But the communication I'm talking about right now is our ability to actually talk back and forth to one another and coordinate. Something hits the fan and the tanks are rolling, and my son is on another part of the town and he's on his way home, and I know it. But I know I trained him, and he has his radio in his bag. And I need him to stay away because they're coming and they're trying to round people up. I need to be able to hit my son and say, listen, and whatever code I have to, I need you to go to Safe House 1, Safe House 2, or over here at this meetup spot. Don't come home. If I can't put that communication out because the towers are down and the grid is down, my son's going to walk right into something. Like I said, I step away and something happens and my wife and my son are home, she needs to be able to call me and say, listen, don't come back home. They came here looking for you. Just stay away. Or vice versa. Like that, we have to get that into our minds. Had those people who were in them crowds when things jumped off of Brother George Floyd, just think about it. Had any of them, if 2 or 3 of them in strategic locations had a radio, and at least one was listening to the police department, their local police department, they would have heard them make those calls to cut off on the street. And they could have sent a blast A to that big old crowd. No, listen, go down here because they're about to set a barricade. We need to stop them from putting the barricade because they're about to try to lock us in. And then they're going to start approaching. And now they do. You see them moving. When you see them lined up for a while, and they're on their line, right? And you see them with their big shields and all that thing. They're not just standing there waiting for nothing. They're setting up other ways to corral. They're putting people in place, and they're doing this using walkie-talkies. Just picture this. You stand in the crowds and we see them. They always show the line. They always show the line, and people getting in their faces. We're just all this emotion. Walking dead, all this emotion, moving off of emotion and not off of intellect and not off of knowledge, not off of intel. While they got us focused on this line that looks intimidating, they're sending other officers around to block off certain things so that when that line starts to, then you see them start moving. They start throwing the flashbangs to cause more confusion, to throw you even more off, but they keep moving the line slowly but surely. And then everyone starts to move exactly where they want you to move. But if we were on them radios, we could say, hey, no, they're about to go cut off. If they cut that off, then we're not going to be able to, and they're going to corral us over here and da 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 da. And we could easily, in a crowd of 10,000, send 100 people to block off the street. There's nothing they can do about that. Unless they're going to run us over. If we go and in the middle of the street, 100 people can lock down the street. A lot easier than 2 police cars can. The only reason why they're able to do it is because they can get somebody to a certain spot based off of their intel to block the crowd from getting there in the first place. But if I hear it, and I hit the person to have up closer to Nealon Street, all I got to say, hey, we need you to grab a group of 100, grab you a battalion, whatever, a troop or whatever, and we need you to go down and lock that street because they're about to try to come down that way. Problem solved. At least temporarily. You can force them to reroute themselves. Think about that. Think about the implications of that. Think about the power that exists in that ability to make that communication, to receive their communication and then put out a counter communication where they're now they have to refigure their plans. They don't never have to worry about that with us. This doesn't happen. They put that line in front of us, get us riled up. It's intentional. They know a part of their tactic is to make you emotional, to get you in a state of mind that you're reactionary and not proactive. Proactive is coming with this radio. And you got people at strategic locations when they say and they give this communication, we need you to hit us up, whatever code, so we know to go this way. And a crowd of 50,000 people can overcome the police easily if we were able to communicate. It doesn't take much to understand how we could make that happen. Perfectly legal, by the way. There's nothing illegal about it. The world don't want me to get off the game I'm getting now. This isn't a game about how to get $1 million. This isn't about, I'm not selling you a product. I'm not promoting myself. I'm spending this time and my energy, and this is live, and anybody can tap into this right now. And I'm going to say this, and I'm giving you something that can save your life. I'm giving you something that can save you time and energy. I'm giving you something that if you take what I'm telling you and you prepare yourself and you prepare your family, you'll put yourself in a better position to be able to navigate what it is that we're going into. We're not going to avoid all the problems. We're not going to avoid this fight. But what we can do is put ourselves in a position to not be completely herded like sheep to a slaughter. It's just not, it doesn't make sense, If you found any value in what I've given you tonight, when I post the video on IGTV, come back to my page, like it, comment on it, repost it if you like, invite some other people to view it, because for those who stick around long enough at least to hear what I'm talking about, you know the value in what I just gave. Check out Daniel that checked me out on YouTube, Daniel KC1NCF, to learn more. Also hit my DM if you want more information on how to obtain an amateur radio or a license. We can do a one-on-one consultation or whatever. I can talk to you, because it's more than just buying the radio, like I said earlier. Peace, brother KCOCCB. Honestly, for a second, I seen that, I was thinking maybe he's a ham radio operator. So yeah, so I'm gonna save this live, share it out to people. But if you found any value in it, please like it, repost it, comment on it, and invite other people to do the same. I didn't see any more questions or requests to go live, so I'm gonna end this live in about 20 seconds just to see if something pops up real quick. I appreciate everyone that came through and spent some time with me tonight. I don't go live often, and when I do go live, it's for a reason. It's not, I don't promote myself. I don't promote nonsense. I'm on here with the mission to spread information, knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and in general, something that we can use. You know, that's my mission. My mission is to help the Honorable Brother Minister Louis Farrakhan get the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to every corner there, and best believe this falls into that teaching, the preparedness, the being ready for the day and time that we're living in right now. It is a part of it. Make no mistake. This is perfectly aligned with what we're taught. If I said anything that was good or useful, it is not from me. I'm not the author of anything I'm saying. I'm just a conduit that Allah God uses to speak through. If anything, that's for anything good that comes to me. Anything that I said that might have been wrong, or I might have misstated something, it's possible. I'm passionate. Charge that to my head and not to my heart. If you find anything wrong and say, hit me up, let me know. I have no problem coming over and correcting what I might have said that might have been a little off. But I'm speaking from what I understand, my vantage point, from my study, from my active involvement. And so thank you all again for tuning in. Brother Daniel KC1NCF signing off. You all have a blessed and wonderful night. Peace.